is allowing me to work remote. Over the course of it, I don't get paid for like the shifts in person that I'm missing, but I can do some stuff remotely, which is nice. I just won't be able to work with the kind of people that I work with. And again, I always say this, but I work with a very sensitive class of people, so I keep that separate from the internet, just because the internet is a wonderful place, but it's also a dangerous place, and if they see me on here, no worries, but if I say what I do and then somebody sees me in public and they realize what I do, it's potential for it to negatively impact the people that I work with. So that's just why. Now, this video is going to be slightly quicker for one of my monthly flowers videos, but this is just because this is a continuation of my Pride Month content. I'm hoping to make a lot more in August, because that's kind of the month that my local city, like the city that I live closest to, is sort of, we do all of our Pride stuff in August. But what was I gonna say? I forget what I was gonna say. Fuck. Oh, right. That's why I'm hoping to do a little bit more of my Pride stuff, and this is kind of a perfect segue into that. So, in case you were not aware, back in April, I launched membership features on my channel. There's also a weird whistle in my throat, but I launched membership features. So, essentially, if you are a Sprout, you get to suggest one video per month. You also get a check-in video, some emojis, a badge, progress updates, all that kind of stuff. And then, if you are one of the Flowers members, you get the opportunity to suggest 2 videos a month, and then there's some shoutouts during a Trigger Word Tuesday at the very end of each Trigger Word Tuesday. So this is my second July Flowers video, which is of course coming out in August, but I've said before that I want to give everybody the maximum amount of time possible to suggest things. So if there's a month where the suggestions haven't come in during that month, then I'll give a little grace period just for things to get suggested, or possibly to come up with like a contingency, and then release them in the first week of the next month. So, with that all being said, this was a request from Melanie, who on this channel has kind of become a trigger word in their own right. Like, it's kind of interesting about like how just amazing Melanie has turned into, like, it turned into such a trigger word that people commented. Like, this is not nothing. Like, people commented. It's like how Mads ASMR, a lot of people find her repeating Maddie quite triggering, like in the good way, like tingly. Not, yeah, tingly is the word, not triggering. But you get what I'm saying. Anyway, so what I am doing now, it's funny, the 2 member videos I have requested, I have needed my phone for, so I was sort of suggested to talk about some LGBTQIA plus charities. I use the IA plus because I'm A's, and it also leaves room for inclusion and all that kind of stuff, and causes that I really believe in. Now, one of these is one of them that I'm very excited about. I'm mentioning ones from all across Canada, just not to make it so hyper-local, but just being said, I think some of the best stuff that you can do to support local queer individuals is support local drag shows. I know a lot of people, and even if you're an ally, even if you're not quite sure what you should be doing, there is space for people at drag shows. I know there is a lot of sort of discourse about queer spaces for queer people, and I think those are very, very important. Things like clubs and bars, they remain safe spaces as long as we keep them that way. And I think a lot of people who are allies possibly take that in the wrong direction, and they say, well, why don't you trust us? I'm a safe person, this, that, and the other thing. You might be. But other people, not so much. Other people can start to invade our spaces in order to cause harm. It might also be that safe spaces for women, because a lot of spaces for women are naturally, and this is sick that it happens so often that I have to use that word, sort of preyed upon by men, because in the heterosexual world, I think a lot of typical heterosexual dynamics are very man as hunter and woman as prey, in sort of the most sort of reductive terms, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And that's not necessarily true. It's a generalization, but it is a generalization made in huge bases of evidence, and it's well known that a lot of spaces where women have felt safe often get sort of invaded by men, especially if we're talking about clubs and things like that, like straight clubs. I guess straight clubs, they're not marketed as for straight people, but often are not safe spaces for women, because it mixes alcohol and dancing and darkness and large crowds with men. And men, some men, sort of a worrying fraction of men, are the kind of people who look to take advantage of that. So I think that as an ally, it is important that you consciously participate in queer spaces and ensure that the safety is maintained. There's a lot of respect that is there, and I would even say if there are people who are hostile to allies in their sort of spaces and communities, I don't think that it is necessarily right that they are hostile, but it is likely coming from a place of being made unsafe by certain allies. So I think the best thing that you can do without giving money, without volunteering time, all that kind of stuff, is educating yourself on what being a safe ally and what being a respectful ally looks like. Things like going to local drag shows, tipping your local queens, not just attending DragCon, not just attending shows that are put on by famous drag queens, tours, things like that. Your local queens need that money far more than Eureka O'Hara, than Naomi Smalls, than Pop the Drag Queen, than Bianca Del Rio. These people are all wonderful. I have mixed feelings about Eureka, but RuPaul's Drag Race girls are generally decent, but your local queens need the support more. The other thing that I think people can do is try to promote safe spaces for queer people, putting up pride flags, giving pronouns when you're introducing yourself. All of these things are such small gestures, but they really do go a long way, especially in the violence aspect of things. I think a lot of people who do have to give their pronouns in order to be respectfully referred to are the kinds of people who will be subjected to violence. Transgendered people, queer people, non-binary people, these are all people who at some point in their life have been made to feel unsafe because they are the only ones in the room giving pronouns. So, if you begin giving your pronouns, even if you are full-on cisgendered, nothing has changed about your pronouns, there's nothing like fun going on there, I'd say to start giving them. I do very often when I introduce myself, only in situations where I feel it is not safe. I don't give them, but I give, like when I go out to work, if I'm meeting somebody new, in my interview, all that kind of stuff, I give pronouns because that's just a way for me to normalize something, to make it sort of less outing for people who do need to give their pronouns. It sort of provides safety in numbers. Same thing with putting up pride flags, things like that. I mean, obviously do what is safe for you in your area. I know a lot of places in the United States that's not necessarily what you can do, and especially in other countries, piss off a homophobe, attend a protest, attend a pride, make queer people, make people of sort of our community feel safe with you. So many people do not feel safe to us. I mean, I am cisgendered, I'm white, I'm male, I have all the protections afforded to people like me in society, and I still feel unsafe around certain members of my community. So, just by being a safe person, that's the biggest thing that you can do. But, other than my advice for allies, I think that just generally for everybody, creating safe spaces, supporting initiatives, supporting pride crosswalks, supporting raising the pride flag in your community, like all of these things are small, but it takes billions of drops of water to create an ocean, and there's no way that we're going to sort of create that ocean without a drop of water. So if we keep just adding drops of water to the bucket, eventually we'll have an ocean. It's a messy metaphor, but we support messy metaphors here. Anyway, we're gonna get to some organizations Canada-wide that if you are financially able to, you can support. If you can volunteer time, probably even better for these organizations. But this one is the one that I've given to before, and that's Rainbow Railroad. I knew a couple who at one point did house, I think, oh gosh, it was somebody, I won't give too many details, but somebody from a country where it is not safe to be gay. They were sort of found out, and it was punishable by imprisonment, and Rainbow Railroad did help this person get out of their country, and for a little while, this person ended up living with a couple that I knew, and then I believe that person who escaped is doing much better lately, so they do good work, and it's real, it's not some sham. So, under the sort of railroad, oh god, come here, so, just so that I get things right, I am reading, but most of these I've heard of. It's essentially, it's Rainbow Railroad. Its whole thing is the provision of safe travel and drop-of-the-hat travel to members of the LGBTQ plus community who are, in acute danger. They're at risk of imprisonment, violence, or worse. And it's essentially it pairs private sponsors to these refugees. It helps them do paperwork. It helps them get to an airport or an outlet of their country. Something's really tickling me. So that they're able to keep themselves safe, and then connects them, of course, to people in Canada, so that they have sort of access to a community and access to safety, which I think is incredibly, incredibly important. So, if you're looking for the Rainbow Railroad, I think this is actually a really good website, 2020 Arts. I don't know, it's kind of difficult to see, but there is sort of their logo. There's their logo, of course, making reference to the historic Underground Railroad, which, of course, Canada played a large part in, or at least sympathetic people within Canada played a large part in helping escaped, enslaved people in America get to safety, where, of course, in Canada we had abolished slavery at that point under the British Empire, which I think some Canadians get big-headed about, but the fact that we had an era where it would have been legal, we're not as sort of high and mighty as we think that we are here. So, the next is the 519. The next is the 519, and basically, this kind of goes to that sort of safety thing. So, making queer people feel safe in their communities. The 519 does a lot of work aggregating resources services, creating safe spaces, finding supports for like people who are previous victims of the AIDS crisis, older members of our community, and sort of like event sort of programming and things like this. I think it's such an important thing for the queer community not to only have clubs and things like that as spaces. In my area, that's literally the only space we have, other than like the university club that's sort of at the U of A, which is fine, but it's also not open to a lot of people. And it just, I don't know, like, there needs to be a lot more spaces. The other thing that personally I have experienced is the fact that some of these queer spaces are available, but they are quite insular, and I've had a hard time sort of breaking into the sort of spaces that I would like to. So I think that having a charity out there that helps sort of organize this and facilitate this is really, really vital and really important. And that is also kind of going into my probably favorite one. This is Outsport. Outsport. And it's an organization in Toronto. I would die for it to come here. It basically is what it says. It helps sort of like amateur sports people, recreation people, to gather and provide services for queer people specifically. And I think that I, as a person, I'm not into like sports like football, baseball, soccer, football, whatever. Hockey, I could do without, but would I be encouraged to go out swimming a lot more if I had a group of people who wanted to do it with me? Yes. Would it be amazing if those people also happened to be queer people that I could like feel safe and be friends with? Absolutely. I think that being active is so vital, and like promoting safety within, providing a space for improving your health. I don't know, I think that's such a good, like, such a good resource that we don't really have a lot of, because I think a lot of queer people are excluded from the athletics space. Things are getting better. I mean, there's tons of queer people at the Paris Olympics right now, but I think that the more it can happen on an amateur scale, I think the better, because it's community, it's health, it's safety. I don't know, especially when sports and athleticism is nerve-wracking to get into as an out and sort of visibly gay queer person, where it's like, I know people will be looking at me, and I know there's the kind of people, specifically men in gym environments, who could potentially be the kinds of people who are not okay with me, and that just, I don't know, it really takes me out of it. This next one, I would love to get involved with this organization. I really need to look them up, but it's the Archives with a Q. My phone screen is really not doing good right now, but this is like a queer archiving project where you get like access to LGBTQ+, sort of just resources in history and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's so important, especially because in the last couple of years, I've realized that Pride needs to be a lot more about liberation, because we're not all safe yet. Where if we learn a lot more about queer history and the movements that brought us to where we are today, it helps us carry that momentum forward, because if we know how that momentum got started, we know what we did to get to the place that we are. And I think liberation follows when you continue on with that kind of legacy, and you keep fighting for the freedom to exist as you are, which I think that's basically the whole thing, is vital to our survival as a community is like fighting back and sort of seizing the means. Sounds like I'm seizing the means of production. But like seizing the agency within our fight for rights rather than just voting and hoping, actually going out there and getting what we deserve, essentially. Then this next one is a little bit, the next two are a little bit more Toronto specific, but this says Buddies in Bad Times Theatre, and then Inside Out Film Festival. There, it's a little sort of, looks sort of like the lesbian colors in the rainbow, where those ones are a lot more sort of focused in the Toronto area, of course, but they are sort of arts programs and like promoting queer art. I think historically we've been the best artists. Am I wrong? Like, ever? I mean, modern dance these days is owed directly to New York ballroom scene, where transgendered people of color were like essentially trailblazing modern pop culture. Like, in no uncertain terms, has sort of pop culture followed queer people, especially within the last 50 years. It has been like full on us creating spaces for art to be made, and I think that also goes hand in hand with a lot of Black and Latin culture that has paved the way for the majority of modern music, which has again paved the way for the majority of modern just culture in general. I think that any sort of local artists programs, again, you can search these things up. There's tons all across the country. There's a couple in the city that I'm closest to as well, where it's just like, it is so encouraging to encourage especially queer youth to get involved with the arts, because oftentimes we are, like I say, very creatively driven, very cerebral people, very intelligent people, emotionally and sort of practically. So I think providing outlets in that way is the best thing that we can possibly do. And then, where are we? Here we go. And then, okay, so this IGAD, Canada Human Rights Trust charity, is very much focused on the fight for rights, the fight for education, and the fight for awareness. There's also a legal component to this as well, sort of supporting and creating space to forward liberation, to forward the fight against sort of hate and homophobia and transphobia, and giving us legal support in that, in the case that we ever need it. Knock on wood that we don't, but, you know, we will. And then, let's see, come on here. This last one in this list is PFLAG Canada. You can kind of see its logo up at the top there. And come on here, there we go. So, the process of coming out can sometimes be a little bit rough, no matter what age that you are. And this one, this charity, PFLAG Canada, kind of helps bridge gaps and provide families and communities going through a tough coming out process communicate more about that. Oftentimes, for queer people, especially queer youth, family is still the lifeline, even when those people do not support us. I know this very acutely, where after I came out, my mom and her family, full on, amazing, supportive. My aunt called me and she was like, "You need anything, we are your soft place to land." I cried on that phone call. I felt very nice about that. The other side of my family, I seen him cry was when Wayne Gretzky retired. So, I was not accepted, I was not welcomed, and I was very lucky that eventually we came to the conclusion that this side of my family was not people that we needed in our lives, because they were very destructive, and not just to me, but also to my mom. So I completely understand if you need to not interact with people in your family. That is a perfectly valid sort of conclusion to come to. What a lot of us don't have the luxury to do, though, is to do just that, to cut people out and to leave. So, I think having an organization out there that gives people tools to begin to accept and to learn about each other, I think is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important, and it also prevents a lot of violence. It prevents a lot of sort of harm that could come to one of the members of our community because they come to the conclusion that their family won't accept them, so it is better off that they are not with us. I think that improving that process in preventing those kinds of thoughts from ever happening is invaluable, because we need to get it to the point where not only are we trying to prevent tragedies happening in our community, but we need to make sure that we are protecting our youth, especially our gender non-conforming youth, our trans youth, our two-spirit youth, who are so disproportionately at risk of coming to those kinds of conclusions and having those kinds of thoughts. It sickens me, to be quite honest. So, we need to protect queer youth, and any organization that is doing that, I would dedicate my life to, if I didn't live under capitalism. But sadly, we do. But anyway, so those are just 10 sort of organizations that you can look into that are very Canadian. Like I said, I didn't go hyper-local, just because I think that's it's very specific to people. But going to local drag shows, supporting people, providing a home for a youth who is in a not safe situation with their family is so valuable and so vital.